Good, everyone. Life is full of distractions, noise, and unnecessary burdens. If we want to live with peace and purpose, we must learn to let go. Today, I want to share 6 things you should quietly eliminate from your life to live more freely and wisely. Negative thoughts are one of the most powerful forces in our lives, yet they often arise without warning, uninvited, and can quietly shape our actions, moods, and decisions. Every person experiences them, moments of fear, doubt, regret, or anger that replay in the mind over and over. These thoughts can feel real, as if they are facts, but they are merely perceptions, interpretations of events filtered through our own biases and past experiences. The key is not to eliminate thought itself, for thinking is natural, but to learn how to recognize negative thoughts, understand their origin, and stop them from taking control of our minds and our lives. When a negative thought arises, it is easy to react immediately, to let it twist our emotions, and to allow it to shape our day. For instance, imagining failure in a task that has yet to begin can sap our motivation before we even take the first step. Thinking that someone dislikes us without evidence can create unnecessary tension and anxiety. Dwelling on mistakes from the past can keep us trapped in regret, unable to act with clarity in the present. These thoughts are not inherently true, and they are certainly not permanent, yet we often treat them as both inevitable and unchangeable. The first step toward managing negative thoughts is awareness. We must notice them without judgment, as if observing clouds passing through the sky. When a hurtful or fearful thought arises, pause and examine it. Ask yourself whether this thought is grounded in reality, or whether it is an exaggeration fueled by emotion. Recognize the difference between what you can control and what you cannot. Many negative thoughts focus on things outside your power, other people's opinions, the past, or the uncertainty of the future. Investing energy in these things is wasted energy. By observing a thought objectively, we create a small distance between ourselves and the thought, a space in which we regain control. It is in this space that we can choose our response, rather than reacting automatically. Repetition of negative thoughts strengthens them, making them easier to recall and harder to dismiss. Every time we ruminate on fear, anger, or resentment, the mind treats it as a familiar path, and soon it feels as if the thought is part of who we are. To counter this, it is essential to practice replacing destructive patterns with rational reflection. This does not mean forcing positivity or ignoring reality, but rather questioning the validity of the thought and seeking a balanced perspective. For example, when a thought of failure arises, consider evidence from your past that contradicts it, or think about the small steps you can take to move forward despite uncertainty. Another important aspect is understanding the impermanence of thought. Just because a thought is present now does not mean it will stay. Feelings of anger or fear can be intense in the moment, yet they fade if allowed to pass rather than acted upon. By training yourself to let thoughts come and go, you reduce their power to dictate your actions. Silence, meditation, or simple mindful breathing can reinforce this practice, providing the mind with a sense of calm and control. Over time, learning to let go of negative thoughts strengthens resilience. You begin to notice when your mind wants to spiral into worry or self-criticism, and you no longer need to follow it blindly. This creates a clarity that allows you to focus on what truly matters, rather than being pulled by imagined dangers or past mistakes. By consistently practicing this, the mind becomes an ally rather than an adversary, capable of seeing challenges clearly and responding wisely instead of reacting impulsively. Negative thoughts are not obstacles to be feared but signals to be observed. Each one offers an opportunity to practice self-discipline, to strengthen awareness, and to reclaim authority over your own mind. The process requires patience, because the mind is conditioned over many years to react automatically, yet with steady effort, it becomes possible to reduce the influence of negativity. Toxic relationships are often hidden in plain sight. They can take the form of friendships, family connections, romantic attachments, or even professional ties. These relationships drain energy, cloud judgment, and disturb the inner calm necessary for a balanced life. Unlike ordinary disagreements or conflicts, which are natural and temporary, toxic relationships consistently bring negativity, manipulation, or unnecessary drama. People involved in such relationships may constantly criticize, belittle, or undermine your confidence. They may demand more attention than they give, create unnecessary stress, or foster dependence that limits personal growth. Over time, the effects accumulate, subtly shaping thoughts, emotions, and behaviors. Living in the shadow of toxic influence can make one feel perpetually anxious, exhausted, or uncertain. Identifying toxic relationships requires careful self-reflection. It is not always obvious because humans tend to justify others' behaviors or hope they will change. However, certain patterns are common. If interactions leave you feeling drained rather than energized, anxious rather than calm, or doubtful rather than confident, it is a sign that the relationship may be harmful. Repeated patterns of manipulation, disrespect, or dishonesty are indicators that the connection is not serving your well-being. Emotional boundaries often help in recognizing toxicity. When someone consistently crosses limits, dismisses your needs, or pressures you into discomfort, it is a clear signal. Healthy relationships respect boundaries, allow mutual support, and encourage personal growth. Toxic relationships, on the other hand, feed on imbalance, and imbalance leads to conflict, resentment, and frustration. The mind responds to these dynamics by creating unnecessary stress hormones, which over time can affect mental clarity and physical health. Reducing or eliminating toxic relationships is not an act of cruelty or selfishness, it is an act of self-respect and self-preservation. Many fear ending relationships due to guilt, obligation, or fear of confrontation, but maintaining harmful connections only prolongs suffering. Choosing to distance oneself does not require a dramatic confrontation in every case. Sometimes, quiet withdrawal, setting firm boundaries, or reducing contact can restore balance. In other situations, a direct conversation may be necessary to assert your needs and clarify expectations. The process may be uncomfortable initially, because toxic relationships often create dependency, fear, or emotional attachment. The mind may struggle with letting go, replaying memories, or imagining negative consequences, but the discomfort is temporary compared to the lasting peace gained. Another important aspect is understanding that removing toxic influence creates space for positive connections. Relationships that nourish growth, kindness, and trust naturally emerge when there is clarity and calm in the mind. By eliminating negativity, you allow yourself to invest time and energy in people who align with your values and respect your presence. This does not mean expecting perfection from others, but seeking balance, reciprocity, and support. Over time, the absence of toxic influence increases resilience, focus, and emotional stability. Decision-making becomes clearer, priorities sharper, and the ability to respond wisely rather than react impulsively strengthens. Mental energy is freed from constant worry or defensiveness, allowing attention to flow to meaningful pursuits rather than endless drama. Recognizing and acting upon toxic relationships is a form of discipline. It requires honesty, courage, and clarity about what is truly valuable. It may involve difficult conversations, uncomfortable emotions, or the challenge of standing alone for a time. Yet it is in this space that personal growth thrives, because without the weight of toxicity, the mind and spirit can recover and flourish. Learning to let go quietly, without unnecessary confrontation, is a skill that ensures peace while maintaining dignity. It allows for reflection, calm, and the strengthening of inner boundaries that protect against future harm. Excessive desire is one of the most subtle traps in life. It begins quietly, almost unnoticed, as a thought or a longing, and over time it can grow into a driving force that dictates actions, emotions, and priorities. Desire itself is natural. Humans naturally seek comfort, security, and pleasure. The challenge lies not in wanting, but in wanting excessively, in letting the mind become consumed by craving what is not necessary, or what lies beyond our control. When desire dominates, it distorts perception, creating the illusion that fulfillment depends on acquiring external things rather than finding contentment within. This can appear in many forms: wanting wealth beyond what is needed, seeking fame or recognition, craving approval from others, or constantly chasing experiences that promise happiness but fail to deliver lasting satisfaction. Each unfulfilled desire brings discomfort, anxiety, or restlessness, and each fulfilled desire often leads only to another, like a chain that never ends. The more one seeks outside, the less inner peace one finds. Excessive desire is often fueled by comparison. Observing what others have and feeling envy or inadequacy is a common way the mind becomes trapped. Social status, possessions, achievements, or appearances can seem essential to happiness, yet they are fleeting and often outside our control. By focusing on what others possess, the mind loses sight of what is already present and sufficient. This pattern creates a cycle. The desire grows, temporary satisfaction is sought, disappointment follows, and the mind seeks the next object to fill the void. To counter this, the first step is awareness. Notice when longing arises and ask whether it is necessary, productive, or within reach. Question whether fulfillment truly lies in the object of desire or in the mindset of wanting. Desire that is conscious and intentional can drive positive action, but desire that is blind or excessive leads to suffering. Another important aspect is understanding impermanence. What we crave today may lose value tomorrow. Wealth can vanish, status can fade, health can decline, and possessions can break or be lost. By recognizing that external things are not permanent, the mind becomes less dependent on them for happiness. Appreciation of what is already present becomes a source of genuine satisfaction. Practicing moderation is a powerful tool. This does not mean rejecting all comfort or pleasure, but rather choosing intentionally, without compulsion, and understanding the difference between need and excess. When desires are moderated, the mind becomes clearer, more focused, and less prone to agitation. It also strengthens self-discipline, because the individual is no longer enslaved by impulses or fleeting cravings. Excessive desire also clouds judgment. Decisions may be made impulsively, relationships strained by jealousy or expectation, and time wasted chasing illusions of happiness. By reducing unnecessary desire, clarity returns. Choices become deliberate rather than reactive, and effort can be focused on meaningful pursuits, personal growth, and actions that align with values rather than whims. Gratitude is another countermeasure. By consciously appreciating what is already possessed, skills, relationships, health, time, the mind naturally reduces the need for more. Gratitude shifts attention inward, toward the cultivation of character, virtue, and calm, rather than outward toward endless accumulation. Finally, reducing excessive desire strengthens resilience. Challenges and setbacks are faced with steadiness rather than panic. When life denies a wanted outcome, the mind is not overwhelmed, because attachment to external things is tempered. The individual learns to accept events as they are, to act where possible, and to release what cannot be controlled, leading to a quieter, more enduring contentment. Complaining is a habit that quietly drains the mind and saps energy. It often begins as a simple expression of discomfort or frustration, but when repeated, it becomes a pattern that shapes how we perceive the world and respond to challenges. Complaints rarely solve problems, they simply reinforce negative thinking and shift attention away from action. When we complain, we focus on what is wrong rather than what can be done, creating a mindset of helplessness. This mindset can spread, influencing not only our own thoughts but also the energy of those around us. People who complain frequently may find themselves trapped in cycles of dissatisfaction, unable to recognize opportunities for improvement or growth. Complaining can take many forms. It may be verbal, expressed to others, or internal, whispered in the mind. It may target circumstances, other people, or even oneself. The common thread is a focus on obstacles, injustices, or disappointments rather than solutions. Every complaint is a choice, and by choosing to dwell on problems, the mind reinforces feelings of frustration, resentment, and stress. The first step toward reducing complaints is awareness. Recognize when the urge to complain arises and pause to observe it without acting immediately. Ask whether the complaint is productive or necessary. Often, it is simply a habitual reaction, triggered by minor irritations or discomforts that do not require prolonged attention. By noticing these moments, we create space to respond differently. Another step is shifting focus from problems to solutions. When something goes wrong, it is natural to feel discomfort or disappointment, but these feelings should prompt action rather than endless verbal or mental repetition. Identify what can be done, however small, to address the issue. Action restores control and prevents the mind from being dominated by negativity. Accepting what cannot be changed is equally important. Life presents many circumstances beyond our influence: weather, other people's choices, unforeseen events. Complaining about these things wastes energy and increases suffering. By distinguishing between what can be acted upon and what cannot, the mind learns to conserve energy for meaningful efforts instead of futile resistance. Silence and reflection are tools that strengthen the ability to resist complaining. Observing a situation quietly, considering options, and waiting before speaking or reacting cultivates discipline. Over time, this practice trains the mind to respond calmly rather than react impulsively. Gratitude also counteracts the urge to complain. Focusing on what is present and positive, no matter how small, shifts perspective. When attention turns to what is good or what has been achieved, minor frustrations lose their power, and the mind becomes more resilient to challenges. Reducing complaints enhances clarity of thought. Without the constant noise of dissatisfaction, the mind sees situations more clearly, recognizes opportunities, and makes wiser decisions. Energy previously spent on repetition and negativity is freed for action, reflection, and meaningful pursuits. Complaining often stems from attachment to comfort, outcomes, or expectations. When events deviate from what is desired, the mind protests. By learning to release attachment to perfection or constant control, complaints naturally diminish. Life is unpredictable, and expecting it to align perfectly with personal desires leads to frustration. Acceptance, patience, and measured response become stronger guides than complaint. Over time, abstaining from complaining cultivates inner strength and calm. Challenges remain, discomfort exists, but the mind faces these with composure, focusing on what is within control and letting go of what is not. This practice not only improves personal well-being but also fosters respect and trust in relationships, as others sense the stability and reliability of someone who does not dwell on grievances. The need for approval is a subtle yet powerful force that can quietly dominate a person's life. From an early age, people learn to seek validation from others: parents, teachers, peers, colleagues, or society at large. At first, this may seem natural, even necessary, because humans are social beings who rely on connection and cooperation. However, when the desire for approval becomes excessive, it begins to dictate actions, decisions, and even thoughts. Instead of living according to one's own values and judgment, a person becomes preoccupied with how others perceive them. This dependence on external validation can take many forms. It may appear as constantly seeking compliments or praise, altering behavior to fit the expectations of others, avoiding risks for fear of criticism, or suppressing personal opinions to maintain harmony or approval. Over time, this creates an internal conflict, where actions are no longer guided by reason, integrity, or purpose, but by the fear of disapproval or desire for acceptance. The consequences are significant. When approval from others drives behavior, the individual becomes vulnerable to manipulation, disappointment, and frustration. People may withhold praise, judge unfairly, or act selfishly, leaving the one who seeks approval anxious, insecure, and reactive. Emotional stability depends less on circumstances than on one's inner mindset, and relying on external approval undermines this stability. The first step in overcoming this need is awareness. Observe when actions are motivated by the desire to be liked or accepted, rather than by personal principles. This awareness allows reflection on whether choices align with long-term values or are merely attempts to please others. Another important step is to cultivate self-reliance. Confidence in one's own judgment, skills, and values reduces dependence on others for validation. By developing a clear understanding of personal priorities and moral compass, a person can act decisively without the constant concern of how it will be perceived. Letting go of the need for approval also involves recognizing the limits of influence. Other people's opinions are often shaped by their own experiences, biases, and desires. They are rarely a true reflection of one's character or worth. Attempting to control these perceptions is futile and distracts from actions that genuinely matter. Acceptance of this reality frees the mind from unnecessary worry and allows energy to be focused on productive, meaningful pursuits. Practicing integrity and authenticity strengthens resilience against the pull of approval. When decisions are guided by reason, principle, and purpose, external praise becomes secondary. One begins to act not to impress, but to do what is right or necessary. Mistakes are met with reflection rather than fear of judgment, and achievements are measured by personal growth rather than external recognition. The need for approval often stems from insecurity and fear of rejection, ridicule, or isolation. By addressing these underlying fears through self-awareness, reflection, and small acts of independence, the mind gradually becomes less dependent on validation. Social feedback may still be received and considered, but it no longer dictates emotional state or behavior. Over time, reducing the need for approval fosters emotional freedom and clarity. The individual can pursue goals aligned with values, take risks when appropriate, and respond to challenges with equanimity rather than anxiety. Interactions with others become more genuine, as relationships are built on mutual respect and understanding rather than manipulation or performance. The mind becomes steady and self-sufficient, capable of finding satisfaction in purpose, effort, and personal integrity. By quietly eliminating the compulsion to seek approval, a person gains a profound sense of control, inner calm, and freedom to live according to reason rather than reaction. Wasting time is one of the greatest unnoticed losses in life. Every day, countless hours pass, filled with activity that often brings little meaning, growth, or satisfaction. Time is finite, yet it is common to treat it as though it were endless, spending it on distractions, idle habits, or pursuits that do not contribute to personal growth or well-being. Unlike money or possessions, time cannot be earned back once it is gone. Each moment spent without purpose is irretrievably lost, making awareness and intentionality essential. The first step in addressing wasted time is observation. Notice where energy and attention are being directed. Are hours spent scrolling through endless content, engaging in gossip, or overindulging in entertainment that offers temporary pleasure but no lasting value. While rest and leisure are necessary for balance, much of what is often considered free time is consumed by habits that neither nourish the mind nor serve long-term goals. Understanding priorities is key to using time wisely. Life has demands and responsibilities, but beyond those, time should be invested in what develops character, knowledge, skill, and meaningful relationships. Without clear priorities, one drifts through the day reacting to the next distraction, rather than directing energy toward intentional pursuits. Avoiding wasted time also requires discipline. It is easy to postpone important tasks in favor of immediate gratification, but this leads to accumulation of unfinished work, stress, and diminished focus. Developing routines, setting boundaries, and committing to purposeful actions help the mind resist distractions and maintain steady progress. Another aspect is understanding the fleeting nature of life. Time passes whether one acts or idles, and each day offers opportunities that will not return. Recognizing the impermanence of each moment encourages attention to what truly matters and reduces tolerance for trivial engagements. Mindfulness supports this process by keeping attention anchored in the present. When the mind is aware of each action and moment, it becomes clearer whether the time is being used productively or squandered. Even small periods of idle thought or distraction can add up, so cultivating awareness in daily life strengthens intentional use of time. Wasting time often arises from indecision or fear of starting difficult tasks, fear of failure, or uncertainty about priorities. These mental blocks can lead to procrastination, which consumes time without purpose. Confronting these fears directly and taking deliberate action, even in small steps, transforms idle moments into opportunities for growth. Time invested in reflection, learning, and self-improvement multiplies its value. Reading, studying, practicing skills, or engaging in thoughtful conversation may seem slow, but they produce results that endure far longer than transient entertainment or distraction. Relationships also require time to cultivate meaningfully. Investing time in understanding, supporting, and connecting with others builds bonds that enrich life and contribute to well-being. Conversely, superficial interactions or time spent in conflict without resolution often deplete energy without yielding lasting benefit. Technology and modern distractions make it easy to lose awareness of time. Notifications, social media, endless media streams, and multitasking fragment attention and reduce focus. Guarding time by setting limits, creating periods of uninterrupted work, and consciously choosing engagements ensures that moments are spent intentionally. Over time, eliminating wasteful use of time cultivates clarity, efficiency, and a sense of purpose. The mind is less burdened by unfinished tasks or regret over lost opportunities, and energy becomes available for meaningful action. Decisions are made deliberately rather than impulsively, and each day can be aligned with long-term goals and values. By treating time as precious and irreplaceable, a person learns to move through life with awareness, discipline, and intention, recognizing that every moment carries the potential to shape the future and deepen understanding, skill, and personal growth. Controlling what is within your power is central to living a life of clarity and calm. Much of human suffering arises from focusing on things beyond influence, other people's actions, the unpredictable nature of events, or outcomes that cannot be determined in advance. When attention is given to what cannot be controlled, the mind becomes restless, anxious, and reactive. The key is to distinguish between what is within one's power and what is not, and to direct energy exclusively toward the former. What is within our power is primarily our own thoughts, choices, and actions. How we respond to events, what we value, and the effort we put into endeavors are all within our control. By focusing on these, a person cultivates resilience, clarity, and freedom, because no external circumstance can take away self-mastery. In contrast, external events, such as the behavior of others, natural occurrences, or the passage of time, are beyond control. Attempting to manipulate or resist them often leads to frustration, disappointment, and wasted energy. Accepting this distinction allows one to conserve effort for what truly matters and to approach life with a steady mind. Practicing control over one's own mind requires awareness. Thoughts arise spontaneously, often influenced by emotion, habit, or external circumstances. Observing these thoughts without immediate reaction creates a space in which choice is possible. By responding deliberately rather than automatically, the mind exercises power over its own state instead of being dominated by fleeting impulses or external pressures. Emotions are closely tied to perception. Anger, fear, anxiety, and envy are often triggered by events outside our power, but the intensity of these emotions is shaped by our interpretation. Recognizing that we can choose how to perceive and respond diminishes the sway of external events. For example, criticism may feel painful, but it is our judgment of the words that creates suffering, not the words themselves. Directing attention to actions within control, such as effort, preparation, and integrity, reduces the influence of circumstances that cannot be changed. Decisions guided by principle rather than reaction strengthen the ability to focus on what matters. Consistency in this practice builds confidence and reduces vulnerability to distraction, manipulation, and regret. Another element is patience. Outcomes often unfold slowly, and much is uncertain. By focusing on effort and choices rather than fixating on results, the mind remains steady and less subject to disappointment. Progress is measured by what is within power, not by fluctuating circumstances. Practicing control also requires detachment from outcomes. While goals can be pursued diligently, attachment to a specific result gives rise to anxiety and frustration. By recognizing that success and failure often depend on factors beyond control, one can act with full commitment while maintaining inner equanimity. Self-discipline reinforces this approach. Habits, routines, and deliberate reflection strengthen the ability to act consistently in alignment with values. Small, repeated choices shape character, which in turn governs future responses. The mind becomes a source of strength rather than a victim of circumstance. Applying this principle in daily life transforms challenges into opportunities for mastery. Difficult situations arise, mistakes happen, and people may act unjustly, yet by focusing on one's own response, the individual retains agency. This creates freedom, the ability to act rightly, maintain composure, and preserve clarity regardless of external turmoil. Over time, the practice of concentrating on what is within power fosters resilience, wisdom, and calm. The mind no longer fluctuates with every external event, but remains grounded in reason and principle. Energy is directed toward meaningful effort, rather than wasted on what cannot be altered. Relationships, work, and personal growth all benefit when actions are chosen deliberately, with awareness of responsibility and control. By understanding the limits of influence and focusing solely on one's own choices, a person becomes capable of navigating life with strength, clarity, and a quiet confidence that is not shaken by forces beyond reach. Accepting reality as it is can be one of the most challenging yet liberating practices in life. Often, suffering arises not from the events themselves, but from resistance to them. The mind tends to create stories about how life should be, how people ought to act, or how situations are supposed to unfold. When reality deviates from these expectations, frustration, anger, and disappointment emerge. Learning to see things as they truly are, without distortion or judgment, allows the mind to respond with clarity and composure, rather than reaction and regret. Acceptance does not mean passivity or resignation. It does not require ignoring problems, avoiding responsibility, or tolerating injustice. Rather, it involves a clear acknowledgement of circumstances, understanding what can be changed and what cannot, and acting effectively within that framework. The first step is observation. When a situation arises, pause to notice it fully. Remove immediate emotional labels or assumptions and see the facts plainly. This practice diminishes the influence of personal bias and habitual interpretations, creating space to respond thoughtfully. Resistance to reality often comes from attachment to outcomes or expectations. People imagine that life should be fair, that others should behave in certain ways, or that events should align with personal desires. When these imagined rules are broken, the mind reacts with tension and suffering. Recognizing that such expectations are constructs of thought, rather than inherent truths, reduces the intensity of disappointment. Another aspect is understanding impermanence. All things change: circumstances, people, emotions, and outcomes. Attempting to cling to permanence or to control what is naturally unstable leads to frustration. Acceptance involves embracing the flow of change, adapting without losing equilibrium, and responding with wisdom rather than resistance. Control over internal response is central to this practice. While external events may be unpredictable or uncontrollable, the mind retains power over perception, judgment, and choice of action. By focusing on these internal faculties, a person navigates reality effectively without being swept away by frustration or illusion. Patience is also essential. Accepting reality often means tolerating discomfort, uncertainty, or delay. The mind may resist at first, clinging to desire or expectation, but through repeated practice, patience grows and equanimity strengthens. Challenges become opportunities for learning and growth rather than sources of despair. Reflection supports acceptance. By examining reactions to events, identifying where resistance arises, and understanding underlying expectations or attachments, the mind cultivates self-awareness. This awareness allows the individual to distinguish between what is worth acting upon and what must be released. Acceptance is closely linked to humility. It requires acknowledging that not all outcomes, actions, or circumstances are within personal control. Recognizing the limits of influence fosters clarity, reduces futile struggle, and enhances the ability to act wisely where possible. Expectations that are too rigid or idealized often lead to repeated disappointment. By loosening these expectations and embracing reality as it presents itself, the mind gains flexibility and strength. Acceptance also enhances resilience. Life inevitably presents challenges, losses, and setbacks. When reality is resisted, each challenge becomes heavier and more painful. When it is acknowledged, even difficult circumstances can be met with calm and strategic action. This does not diminish the seriousness of hardship, but allows the mind to respond with focus and determination rather than fear or anger. Over time, the practice of accepting reality cultivates a deep sense of freedom. The mind is no longer chained to imagined ideals, complaints, or frustration. Energy that would have been spent resisting circumstances is now available for constructive action, reflection, and growth. By seeing the world clearly, without distortion or unnecessary expectation, a person learns to navigate life with composure, discernment, and strength, responding to each moment with clarity rather than impulse, and finding stability even amid uncertainty.